Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Bad Boss with Anya Soto, where we reveal all the secrets of bad bosses and bad industries and bad companies. And I have such a baddie here with me, Cindy Gatlin, who's going to share with us different industries. I mean, same industry she's worked in, but different firms and companies. And she's held some awesome positions. Cindy, I'm so excited. I know you to be very courageous. I have experienced you in different places saying the things that nobody wants to say, but everyone is thinking about it. And I think maybe this is what allowed you to be so successful in a male dominated industry. And I think our guests and everybody who's going to listen are curious about like, is it possible to change someone who used to be cynic about a whole culture thing into a champion? Hey.
So, absolutely, because that's how this conversation started. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And I'll tell you, the person you see today is not the person who started here 2 decades ago. So, I'm in finance. Wall Street is typically male dominated, right? And when I started, about 14% of the industry or less was female. Where I worked, there were 3 women out of 62. So it was very male dominated, and I couldn't be the person you see today. I actually gained my way through the corporate ladder, shall we say, by being quiet, being helpful, absorbing information, still holding my ground on some things, but I was not as loud and direct. It's only with time and seniority that you more or less earn that right.
Yeah. But how do you earn seniority, right? Because I hear it all the time that women are told like just be quiet and be useful and be productive and then they'll notice and then they'll promote you. And I think that can take like 30 years to be noticed. So what was the piece for you that you're like, yes, I have to kind of assimilate and tolerate a lot of things and fit in? But what was the piece that allowed you to get your like first promotion, let's say, when you were like, ooh, like I'm going to the next level?
When I moved from Dallas, I became a single mother in Dallas. And when I moved from Dallas to California, I suddenly thought, this is your chance to reinvent yourself. Why don't you be your authentic self? And so I decided to come out here and be my, I think, very outspoken but thoughtful self.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came out in the city as just a very different individual. And ironically enough, that was where I got my first promotion. A company came through and they were like, oh, yeah, we need someone who's got a great resume, et cetera, all these other reasons. But I think it was because I was showing more of my authentic self that I was actually hired.
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm also a fan of saying, listen, there are huge Cindy fans. You either jump off the cliff with me or else you don't like me and you're somewhere over in that corner. And that's okay, because the older I get, the more I think people gravitate towards authenticity. And don't be anyone else, right? Be yourself.
Yeah.
The clients appreciate it in my industry because when I tell them, look, you've really got a problem, they know there really is a problem. They also know that I'm not afraid to face it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, what I do for people outside of their medical health, I really dramatically affect people's lifestyles and their capabilities of making it to the end of their life and the lifestyle that they want to have. So I take that responsibility quite
Yeah.
seriously.
I love that you're bringing that up because when I think of like wealth management firm, right, I think that it's such high pressure because all of my chips are on a table, right? I am trusting you with my assets, with my investments, with my retirement, with my family. And that creates that atmosphere that, and maybe this is where the bias is, right? Like the distrust that you have to overcome or the trust that you have to build that relationship that you will tell me, you will fight for me, you will create it. And was that what you think was creating this almost like toxic competitive environment when we look at the Wall Street?
Oh, well, for many years, I always said I love my clients. I love my industry. I love what I do. I just hated the companies I worked for because that was primarily a lot of management and on occasion coworkers. But clients, part of your job is to fight for them. And management doesn't always love that, but I felt that strongly. And I also thought clients did never have an idea of it. But when I transitioned firms, I realized they must have actually figured out what I was doing because things changed while I was gone.
Yeah.
So that's a tough battle to go into. Anyhow, I don't know exactly what the gist of your question was, though. So will you repeat it for me
I
so I make
want
sure
to
I
talk
answer
about
it?
like the Wall Street, right? Because I want to look at systemic. So let's talk about Wall Street because you have experience, like, yes, finance, but there are different finance firms. And we'll talk about your current experience. But how would you describe that culture for you as a woman?
Oh, Wall Street, not very welcoming. Again, I just go back to that room when I was at Merrill Lynch in Dallas all those years ago. And I was standing up in a room, literally, I'm 6'2", at the back of the room, and there were about 100 people in the room. And a gentleman was up at the front presenting, kept saying, guys, guys, golfing scars, cussing, whatever. And about 45 minutes into the meeting, he looked up, and I was wearing a hot pink linen suit at the back of the room, and he goes, oh, and a gal. I thought, my God, I'm standing under the clock. It took you 45 minutes to notice hot pink 6'2". Yes, it did, because they're just so used to having women all the time.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are going to find that intimidating. I decided to take it another way. I decided it was a challenge. I decided it was going to be what made me unique. I decided this was what I always wanted to do. When I was 15, I started investing. So I didn't want anyone chasing me off of my dreams just because it was a bunch of guys.
Mhm.
It was kind of the same, in undergrad,
Yeah.
there, male and female dominated undergrads. So in a sense, I felt like it was just a continuation of some of my classes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I want to talk about today, right? Because I want to talk about that switch from like a critic. So was there a time where you felt like, oh, all this culture talk is like bullshit and like
Yes.
rah, rah, rah? And especially I think moving to California, right? Because that's what you see. You're like, of course, we're like into like, oh, we're inclusive and equitable and everyone belongs and like, culture matters. So tell me about like that. What did you believe before you had an experience of what a good culture is?
So when I was in Dallas, people probably have these ideas of, it was sexist, it was whatever. Actually, no, it was a wonderful place for me to start. And thank heavens I had the first, part of my decade there, because those people actually protected me. And I had a bunch of gentlemen who I think of treated me as like a father. So at least I got my start in the industry, because if it had been as brutal as it later became, I wouldn't still be in the industry.
Yeah.
I understand why women at senior level are less than 10%, because you just get tired of the fight. You get tired of the constant grind, the battle, etc.
Yeah.
I see it. In fact, I was at a conference last week, 162 people, 6 women. And again, I wore that hot pink linen suit because it's just my way of saying, hey, we're here, I'm representing. Going back to the culture. So when I was at Merrill Lynch, great company. I think it's really dependent upon the individuals. Management bleeds down. So I had a fantastic MD. He gave me a very supportive crew around me, even though we weren't working in direct teams. When I came to California, I started working with some very different companies, from large wirehouses to RIAs. Each one had a very different culture. And I hated all of them, except for my current company. And hate is a very strong word. I tell my kid, don't use that word, reserve that for the absolute worst. But I mean, I was miserable at nights. I was crying sometimes. Weekends were exhausting. I was constantly just trying to get by. And in fact, at my last firm, my father, who's one of my closest friends, begged me to just leave the industry. He said, I'm tired of watching you suffer. He said, this isn't good for you or your kid. Give up the money. Let's walk. And I
But
said,
what
Dad,
is it? Why? What is it? It's not trusting, being
no.
thrown under the bus. What is it?
Nothing's ever quite good enough. Let's hit the next hurdle. You got that hurdle. Let's get another bonus. What's the bonus? What's the next bonus? Let's do this. Too many times I felt like people were being short-sighted, looking for the next quarter or for their annual numbers. I was sitting there going, no, I want this client to have X, Y, Z. This is going to take 5 or 10 years to mature. It isn't going to show up on this year's numbers or next year's numbers, but it's the right thing for the client. So it becomes a constant grind, right? Where you have to stand very strong in your beliefs to fight the powers that be who are worried about hitting their numbers. I understand their motivations, but that's not what I'm paid to do. I'm paid to take care of a client. So there's an inherent there's an inherent conflict. There's also an inherent conflict in commissions versus a flat fee. Although there are times where commissions are good. For example, like I have a client who has an account, they're never going to trade anything in there. It's been the same thing for like 15 years. If I put a flat fee on that, that's actually me taking advantage of someone. So you leave that on commission because chances are they're never going to buy or sell anything, and they're going to wait until someone passes away. It's called a step up. Anyhow, I digress. The point is the culture. Management comes up and says, I need these numbers. I need this now. My bonus is dictated by this, and everyone's financially motivated. It is up to the client to find an ethical financial advisor, and that's extremely hard to do. When I had to hire someone for my own portfolio, that was extraordinarily hard. One of the hardest interview prospects I've ever had to go through was interviewing all my coworkers to find the right one.
Really? That's so interesting. And so what would you suggest? What do people, and again, like this is not about a culture, but I'm like, oh, I'm like so curious. Selfishly, I'm like, what would you say like top 3 things to look for when looking for that trustworthy advisor?
It's like finding a good surgeon, right? It's really hard to find one. How do you find it? Ideally, you have someone else who's gone through a similar scenario and you say to them, hey, what have you experienced? What do you think? Because it's very hard to find someone who's ethical. I'd also tell you, we have licenses for a reason. They're online. I can't tell you how many advisors I met in the city. I go back to my office, look them up online. I'm like, whoa, that person has a real substantial lawsuit against them. They have real problems. Look at people's records. Talk to their clients. Almost no one says, can I talk to any of your clients? Anyone who calls my clients, that's what sells them. I'm delighted if they think asking that, but no one wants to take the time.
Yeah.
Interview at least 3. It's just like getting work done on your house. No one wants to do it. It's time consuming, but each advisor is going to teach you something different. And it's like a pair of shoes. You want to make sure it fits. At first it might fit, and then it starts giving you a blister. Get out, right? You will know if you're in the situation and you feel you're being taken advantage of. Things like if you're at a company that sells its own product, be very careful. If they're giving you a lot of their internal product, then they're double dipping on their fees. That's not a good thing. Right? A lot of people aren't aware of that, though.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's the lack of education. So let's talk about Aldrich. I love, again, when we met actually when you were going through an interview process, and it was taken forever. I
Yes.
remember. And I think now looking back, you're like, ooh, like I get it why it was such a long process. I get it why the onboarding was so intense. So talk to me a little bit about kind of like, were you also frustrated how long the process was? And no? Are you
No.
like you could see why they were doing what they were
Yes.
doing? Okay.
It actually made me want them more. It had the opposite effect, where I sat there and
Ooh,
I went,
it's
if
like
you're being,
dating
they
and
were playing.
foreplay. You're like, okay, okay.
Yeah. Because they were taking so long and they were being so thoughtful and they were actually doing their due diligence, which I'd never seen another firm do. I sat there, I said, look, call these people up. They know me. And I said, I'm not even going to call them and tell them you're calling. Just cold call them, see what happens. All of those COIs or center of influences told them, oh my goodness, this is a great fit. You really should. So, your reputation precedes you. But happily, these folks, when they called them, there were 1 or 2 where I sat there and went, oh my gosh, I like that person, but are they really going to speak well of me? I don't know. One of them was a coworker. This individual did an extraordinary job and then later on gave a very honest critique. And I thought, oh gosh, is that going to shoot me down? Because I am a bit of a perfectionist and a note taker. And sometimes I'm going to be hard on the team because I'm going to say, we didn't get this done and I expected it done. I thought that was going to be a criticism. It actually turned out to be something they were looking for. So someone who stops and takes their time, they really knew what they were looking for this time, because I was very unlike most of the current employees in there. And they realized we have a gap here, we have a need, and this woman fills it. They did their homework. And then I got to tell you, because I would be remiss if I did not, there's a gentleman in the office I'm extraordinarily fond of. His name is Carl. He is what sold me on the company. He was thoughtful. He was kind. Every interview, he would ask questions about me personally. Never had that happen ever, period, in Wall Street. I'm sorry, that was a rookie move.
Yeah.
He sat there and he said, well, let me walk you through the offices. And I didn't know it was going to be so pivotal, but we walked past the break room and I saw 3 surfboards hanging on the wall. And the top surfboard said, we care about our people. Second surfboard says our clients. And our third surfboard says our community. And I looked at him and I said, that's wrong. You hung those up wrong, didn't you? And he goes, no, we mean it. I go, in that order? Our people, our clients, our community. I went, no, it should be clients and then our people and then our community, right? He said, no, we care about our people and they have to come first because they're what takes care of our clients. And then in turn, we take care of our community. And I sat there and went, I've never heard anyone say anything like that. And that was the pivotal moment where I thought, okay, I want in, because these guys are advertising it even internally.
Yeah, and that's what I think you're speaking to, right? And I think that's where a lot of companies miss the mark, because they present this image to the world and they say this is who we are with clients, but in their own recruitment, hiring, onboarding, they do not live their values. They do not take time, like you said, even due diligence. You're like, you know what, I'm glad they didn't take a shortcut. I'm glad they took the time to, like, because now I can trust them, because that's what happens with trust, right? Because if you tell me, Anya, you can trust me, and then the next day you say, it's fine, just put some extra hours on the client's account, nobody's gonna know. Or like hide the taxes, or like, because what we do, right, as human beings, I look at one element of your character and I assign it to all of you, and I'm like, ooh, okay, I see you. So now it's like, well, next time you're gonna take a shortcut on me.
Right. Right.
right? So that's how it works. So tell me about onboarding, because I know you guys had phenomenal onboarding. I met with Carl and I agree with you. Like, just so refreshing to see a leader who is genuine, who is kind, who is like authentic. And I want to see more of those examples that it's like, you don't have to be an asshole to be successful. Like the world is changing. You can actually be kind and generous and still keep people accountable. Like it's not exclusive. It's like, hey, I care about you. I want you to grow. I
Right.
want you to realize your potential. So I'm going to keep you accountable, not from a place of fear and punishment, from a place of growth,
Yes.
right? So what was onboarding like?
Well, onboarding is always like drinking water out of a fire hose, right? I'm trying to get clients over. I'm trying to find photocopy. Well, actually, no, I'm not finding photocopiers, but you're just trying
Yeah.
to figure it all out. Who do I contact? I have an associate that you're overwhelming who might have other responsibilities as well. So it was exhausting, but at every step of the way, someone would reach out and say, hey, do you need something? Coworkers would just send me emails saying, hey, I'm tracking you. I know you're busy. I'll talk to you in 8 weeks. That was very thoughtful, right? And
Mhm.
so when you get upper management that's so thoughtful, again, culture bleeds south. And these people are very protective of their culture. I think part of why this ship is different from any other ship I've been on is it's a partnership. So everyone who owns a chunk of the company, they're invested. They have a direct interest in the
Mhm.
company. They want to make clients happy. They want to make their coworkers happy. We make more money as a result of it, but also everyone really cares about the lifestyle of our company.
Yeah.
And while I initially thought that has nothing to do with clients and how happy they'll be and their performance, it actually does matter. Because when someone in the office says, for example, a lot of us have small kids, hey, my kid's going into a hospital, something's come up, everyone says, go, run, we've got you covered. And
Mhm.
in the past, I was told, don't even admit you have a family. I will never forget hearing those words from a woman who told me you should never admit you have a family. And I just sat
Oh,
there and I went, oh, that's the culture I'm in. And I went, okay, I'll never ever mention this. And it was literally just in happenstance that I mentioned I had a child. Whereas at my current firm, people said, well, tell me about your kid. What's your kid do for sports? Da 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 da. If she ever gets sick, people know about it and come in to cover. So what happens as a result of a culture like this? When you are sick, you not only don't feel guilty, you feel supported, but when you come back, you hit 10 times harder
yeah.
because you're so grateful for people caring about you. You're so grateful to have people who are going to cover you when you need it. I will work more hours than they will ever possibly ask me to because I like it. So it's had the reverse effect on me. Before, when people are like, you're working 78 hours a week, but we still need you to do da, da, da. This company is like, look, just work however many hours you want to. And I work harder because I want to. I'm enjoying
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
culture, ironically enough, um, was my motivator. I thought money was, but culture really, I think, has made more of a difference.
Well, money is for a period of time, right? But again, I always say you can only have one car. You can only live in like in this, I mean, drive at the same time and live
I
in.
was about to say I'm into sports cars,
Yeah, yeah.
so
No, but I mean, you can only have your ass in one car, right,
in
at a
one seat
time.
driving,
So,
yes.
and yeah, money does motivate. And I see companies who say, well, Anya, it's all about compensation. And I think especially now, and we're not going to go to the whole new generation, but it's like, yes, it drives you for a while, but then after a couple of months, you get used to the lifestyle and you're
Right.
and now you need more, and now you need more, and it's like a monster that you can never satiate, right? Versus like when like you said, when I care about people and they show up for me, I'll show up for them, and that becomes a co-creation of that ownership of culture and how we treat each other and how we work and just like enjoying each other. And I think people who like each other, who trust each other, are more likely to collaborate, to
Yes.
delegate, to like go for advice, to innovate. Like all of these things are like we like to believe that businesses are rational systems, but they're
Yes.
emotional. Because if you look at emotions, right? It's like crisis happens, what do? We react. And under stress, people become the worst version of themselves, right? With those companies where you have a good culture and something bad happens under stress, we come together as a community and we brainstorm. And now we get many perspectives.
I want to tell you something else because I would be remiss also if I missed this one. This time around, I sat there and I said, lifestyle creep is what you were referring to. So lifestyle creeps up. When you're a kid, you're like, whatever your number is, 30,000. Oh my God, I can't imagine making 30,000. And then it becomes 100,000. The first time you make 100,000, you're excited. And then all of a sudden it's quarter mil, half a mil, whatever. There's always someone further up the ladder from you. So I tell my clients, look, it's really important. I don't care if you have 5 million, 10 million, 100 million. It doesn't matter how much you have saved up, quite literally. Once you're after a certain number, chances are you aren't going to outspend it, except even if you have 100 million saved up, if you spend 20 million a year, guess what? That's 5 years of retirement. I mean, not really, but let's talk about your burn rate. So yes, most people fall into that problem where they start thinking I need to earn more money. This time around, because I'm middle-aged, I sat there for a few months on the beach thinking a couple thoughts. I'd had family members go in and out of hospital. I started thinking, really, Cindy, you're on the back nine of your career. What do you want to do this time around? Take your time. I want to be at one last firm from here until the bitter end, right? And I sat there and I went, I'm going to put a dollar amount on culture. And I'd never done that before. And I don't know that anyone else does. And I said, here's what I used to earn. Here's what I expect to earn at the new firm. If I was actually happy at this firm, if I woke up on Mondays and I was like, yeah, let's go hit this, what would I pay for that? And at first I was like, maybe 20%. And then I started actually coming up with even bigger numbers. And then I went, you know what, if I'm actually really excited about it and I got X numbers of vacation and I could really do those vacations, that's worth up to a third. So I came up with a
trade-off matrix.
A very, very serious number for me. Like I was sitting there going, well, how often do you need a new car? Do you really need a second home? What else do you need or want? Because you're going to be paying for those things with labor at a company that you might not enjoy. So why don't you take labor at a company you do enjoy, and using your example, don't have 2 cars, right? Or if you have a second property, let's make it an investment property, because I'm still a financial advisor. I got to throw that part in.
But I love how much you love your daughter. And I have to say too, like, if you ever see, like, I love when you come and you're like, well, my daughter chose this for me. And it's like a totally ridiculous outfit, but it's like such a big part of you. And to ask you not to have that be part of you sounds so soul crushing.
It was devastating. I was 6 weeks into the company and I thought I was going to throw up. I was like, oh, I picked the wrong firm. And, then I started thinking maybe it was just that individual. And literally I coughed. It was in the height of COVID. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't have COVID. I have a kid who licks the floors. So we're always sick. That was all I said. Didn't say boy, girl, didn't say da-da-da. And the individual at the end of this 45-minute call said, can I give you some advice here? And I remember sitting there going, sure, I'd love that. And it was never bring up your family. And I just thought, but I didn't really. I was trying to assure you, even though it was a digital call. That was back in the era of you wanted to let people know, no, I'm not really going to give you COVID. I was shocked because it wasn't like, hey, I have this awesome kid. And yes, I do let her pick out my outfits. And on that note, she picked out this one today and I was going to go with a different one. And she said, no, you need to have a little more style, Mom.
Oh, yes.
Because you know what? It makes it fun. Your clients do see some crazy, like long chandelier earrings during the day. And they're like, what is going on? I go, well, I let my kid dress me today. And it lowers their anxiety. They kind of have a hard time taking you seriously when you're in a suit wearing chandelier earrings. It's fun. I've not yet received a criticism on it. And none of the outfits have been so crazy. Some pieces have stayed in the car, but none of them have been terrible.
But I just feel like, it creates that sense of shared humanity, right? And like, we're all professionals and we're going to take care of each other. But what you said is like, do you care about me as a human being? Right? And not just the numbers, because that's what makes me trust you. Because if I feel like, well, you're only after performance and transaction, well, every time you turn around, there's like a new commission set or something else, versus like, I actually dig you, like as a person, as a human being. I like who you are. I want to work with you. I want to help you reach your goals. That's a very different approach to wealth management. And hopefully more firms learn that and they'll listen to this episode and they'll be like, damn, maybe I should take care of my culture. And then my people will take care of clients because they love doing what they do.
Also, I got to point out something. There are a lot of really good firms in my industry. Not a lot. I'm going to take that back. There are a few good firms in my industry. And I do think there are a lot of companies that are trying to change their culture. I think part of when you get to the wirehouses or the very large banks, they have a really hard time turning their ships because they're so big, right? I also think there are times where they have the best of intentions. And it could be bleeding down from the CEO, but it gets broken down at a managing director. I think one of the advantages of the current, what I keep calling ships or boats, is I'm at an RIA, so we're quite nimble. So if we aren't liking something or there isn't a cultural fit, people can go.
Yeah.
And that really helps keep us different. And I think that's really important for our clients. Before I
Yeah.
wasn't sold on it until I arrived here. And now I realized my team will do whatever it takes. I've had people working at 4:45 on a Friday afternoon. You sit there and you go, really? I mean, that's not a big deal. We're open till 5. Oh yeah, it is on Wall Street. Most people will clock out at about 1 or 2 o'clock. I've had someone sit there late at night waiting for a wire for a client. No one asked them to. And then they got in early on a Monday morning because they were trying to help this client out. You can't pay people enough to motivate them for that.
Yeah. You
That's a
can.
culture thing.
That's
If
cute.
I get a team member who volunteers and cares, I can't buy that.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's what it looks like when people actually care about your business, care about each other. And also, I'll do that for my colleagues because I don't want to, like throw you under the bus if something happens. So I really hope that more and more companies see it, and especially in your finance industry, right, where it is such a cutthroat, competitive environment. And I also want to say that sometimes it's a company, but it's also systemic. Right, it was systemically set up for competition. So I want to take away that, hey, you can have the best people, but they're legacy organizations that are really, really hard to turn around.
Yes. Yes.
So, and it's like that's how things always been. I see Linda Cortez said, I love that Cindy chandelier earrings. She knows with the Association for Corporate Growth, you never know what Cindy's gonna wear. Well, thank you so much. We are 25 minutes, which is unbelievable. Time flew by. Yeah, I really want to thank you for sharing so honestly, like about your experience, about different roles, and hopefully we inspired some leaders to look at and listen to this and say, hey, how can I create a culture where people care so they're not just clocking in and out?
Let me point out one last thing. You and I started this conversation weeks ago or months ago, and you said, Cindy, I love that you were such a culture cynic. And I said, yes, for many years, I thought you just had to put up with the people in my industry because I cared about portfolio itself and I cared about the clients. I just didn't want to have to work with all the people in the industry to work for it. I have now done a complete 180 to, hey, if you're miserable in your company and you go through 1 or 2 or 3 in my case, keep looking,
Mm,
network more. I think that was the reason why I got out of that cycle and I found a different boat, was because this time around I was determined and I knew people inside the company. I said, listen, I need to know that there isn't this type of personality running it. And everyone assured me there wasn't. So I think it's really critical
mm,
for employees who are out looking to know you need a network
yeah.
and find some other backdoor entry. And all those small red flags are more important than you think. Those 3 surfboards, every day I look at them, I smile and kind of wink at them because I'm like, you were a green flag. So
Yeah.
remind employees to look for the flags before they jump ship.
Yeah. And I love the piece of due diligence of like, do your research.
Yes.
Ask people, how do you feel going to work? Like, how would you describe your culture? What is it like being here on like a Thursday evening? You know,
Oh, I
like,
don't want to be there on a Thursday evening unless
yeah,
there's a glass of wine involved.
I know the good companies will be like, we actually don't want you working late. We want you to get out. We want you to rest and chill and have a life outside. Because, like you said, then when you come back on Monday, you're like, let's go. We're ready to go. Well,
This
thank
is
you.
the first firm I know, first firm I've been at where they said, no, when you're on vacation, we don't expect you to look at them. And do you know what that did? Made me want to look at my emails when every time before I would delete the app. So
Yeah.
it has a reverse psychology. It really does work. We tell
You're
people
like,
don't do it.
what do you
Or in
mean you
my
don't?
case,
What do you mean you don't want me to be a part of it? I want to be part of it. Like I want to see. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate chatting with you. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be some comments from people of like, yeah, how do we collectively turn around our view? And I'm so happy now you know why I do what I do, because I'm like, culture matters. It's good for the business, it's good for your heart, it's good for clients. Thank you guys. And yeah, please reach out to Cindy Gatlin and leave some comments. I'm sure she'll be happy to respond. How to look and what to look for if you want to switch your company. There's always someone better.
thanks, Anya.